Hello, 40 Waters. Longtime listeners of the show will know that I'm a big believer in education, especially music education, and I'm excited to announce that this episode is brought to you by TrueFire. I've partnered with TrueFire to bring you an opportunity to get into their lessons at an affordable rate in a way that's going to help you, help the podcast, and get you playing more guitar. I'm excited to say that you can use the code 40WATT, 40WATT, at checkout to get 40% off your first or next purchase through TrueFire. That includes their all-access pass to have access to all of their lessons and videos and jams. I highly recommend it. I use it myself. I'm a huge fan. I truly believe in TrueFire's motto of live, practice, and play. Please use the link below to get started, and happy learning. All right, 40 Waters, welcome back this week's episode. I'm super excited to have this conversation. So a few weeks ago now, as of recording, I played my hometown blues festival that I've played every year that festival's existed.
Awesome.
And while I was at the tent going to get paid for playing, they're rifling through the envelopes, and I happen to catch a name as they're going through the envelopes looking for my envelope of money so I can pay the band. You know how that goes. Mm-hmm. And it said Kirk Fletcher. And I was like, wait a minute. That's not that Kirk Fletcher, right? He's not here in Clarksdale, Mississippi. And I had no idea. So I pull up Kirk Fletcher on Instagram. Sure enough, he is going to be playing in Juke Joint. So I cornered him. And I did all of the negotiating and finagling I could to get him on the show. So which was pretty much I just asked him, and he said, "Yeah, man, let's do it." So Kirk, welcome to the show. I'm super excited to have you on.
Oh man, thanks so much for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here. It's always great to talk about music and talk about music dear to my heart and stuff, you know. So it's always so cool, and it was cool to be at Juke Joint Festival. Charlie Musselwhite is the person who kind of told me about Juke Joint Festival in a way, you know, and he knew Roger Stoll, you know, and stuff like that. So it was a good, you know, gateway into, you know, doing the festival. So I'm really happy about that, and obviously happy to see Charlie, you know.
Play with So Charlie Musselwhite, for those of you who don't know, if you don't know his music, you need to go look it up if you like blues at all. Charlie is from Clarksdale, lives in Clarksdale. He's actually Roger's neighbor in downtown Clarksdale.
Yeah.
And Roger Stoll is the guy who organizes the Juke Joint Festival and has since he came to Clarksdale, oh my gosh, 20 years ago now. Forever. Yeah. Charlie is one of my favorite people. I've known him for years. I've actually never gotten to play with him. I want to fix that one day, but
have to fix that.
I got to fix that. So, yeah, he came down to Juke Joint Festival. We got to talking, and just before the show, we almost went down the rabbit hole of talking about things before we hit record. You were start talking about all that Southern soul music and some of it. And it's interesting because, and this is a fun topic, and you'll really have a lot to say on this, probably even more than I would. So growing up in Clarksdale, even growing up in Clarksdale, I didn't know a lot about blues music. It just wasn't. It wasn't as talked about then. You know what I mean?
Totally. I get that.
I actually moved to Nashville before I understood the importance of blues music in Clarksdale. I had to be told by people in Nashville how important Clarksdale was.
Yeah.
And so I moved back because I got tired of the Nashville thing. And like, this was in the early 2000s. I got tired of trying to play there because everybody I tried to play with, they were so focused on like their image and their brand and their, you know, like this. And I'm like, have you just picked up your instrument to play for fun in the last like week?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But so
video me while I play, you know.
Right. I was like, oh my gosh. And that's pre-Instagram. That's like pre that movement. I'm like, oh my gosh. Yeah. So I moved back to Clarksdale, and I started playing more in Clarksdale than I ever played in Nashville. And so, but all the guys I started playing with, and it's funny because everybody talks about Delta Blues, and Clarksdale's home of the Delta Blues. Mm-hmm. All the guys I played with were playing Southern soul, R&B. You know what I mean? Yeah. They were playing, you know, Lattimore, Johnny Taylor. They were playing
Marvin Cease and all that.
Oh
stuff.
yes, ZZ Hill.
ZZ Hill. Yeah.
And so it's fun to have someone on the show who knows about those kind of things. But we're going to take a step back. and this is how we're going to get into this.
Mm-hmm.
Kirk, how'd you get into playing guitar and playing music? Take us back.
Oh man, that's very simple. You know, like so many other performers, you know, my father was a pastor of a church in Compton, California called Macedonia Church of God in Christ, you know, and my older brother played guitar, and that's, you know, my older brother was 17 years older than me. So, you know, that's almost like a second parent. That's almost more
Yeah.
like a second parent, you know. And it was just so cool. And really, to be honest, though, I just was a natural guitar player. I was just so, you know how some people are just naturally
It just
just, I don't
clicks.
really know when I played my exact first, when I could play, because it always seems like even before I could actually play it, it seems like I could play it. It's weird, you know.
You
It's
picked it up and it felt comfortable immediately.
immediately, it just seems like I didn't even think about, oh yeah, guitar player, I'm a guitar player. No, it just was something that I always wanted to have in my hands and read magazine. You know, I learned how to read, actually read from reading Guitar Player magazine.
That's awesome.
It's crazy to even think about, you know, but this little kid coming along, learning how to actually read, you know, from Guitar Player magazine. You know.
Yeah, because you found what you were interested in and it made you want to be able to read it.
Wouldn't that
Which,
have been cool to to go to like a performing arts high school? I would have, you know, math and all that stuff. If it had you know, pertain to like, you know, music and everything like that, man, I would have probably excelled at everything. I didn't
yeah.
because I went to a regular high school, but yeah. But
Yeah,
that's a whole nother conversation.
yeah, I didn't take up guitar till I was 18, and
Oh
so
wow,
I was past high school before I started even playing. So
yeah.
that was a whole different experience learning as basically an adult.
But you
Um,
probably had a more of a direct thing when you started, though. Maybe.
I did. It was a weird thing. I similarly started in church playing
Mm-hmm.
just strumming acoustic guitars
Mm-hmm.
in way more boring church. Let's preface that. Way more boring church. Um, the kind of church where they look at you funny if there's a conga drum. Like
Oh yeah,
what?
yeah.
Yeah.
You know, when I first started, we didn't even have drums really. You know, and it was just kind of
Yeah.
guitar and hand claps and stuff. And there's
Uh-huh.
something in my subconscious that always gravitates taking stuff away more so than adding things. I'm more of a
Interesting.
minimalist, so you know, I have this split kind of personality where it's like half of me is really gut bucket, soulful, you know, fat back, chicken grease, hogs, mogs, and chitlins and all that. Because my family's from the South. They from Pine Bluff, Arkansas. And
Right.
then this more slick California thing. And that's where
Yeah.
my tastes are. I like some stuff polished and all that kind of stuff. And that, you know, and you don't find too many people that really did. You know, it's like a lot of guys are so macho and they're like, man, I'm in the 50s cars and I'm into all this old stuff and everything.
Yeah.
Oh, Joni Mitchell, ugh, I never listened at that. And I'm like, man, whatever. You know,
Yeah.
because,
No, and it's such a narrow way of actually, and you see it a lot in the blues too, just in the
oh,
narrow
yeah.
mindset. Everyone has their no, this is the blues. If it's not, an acoustic guitar playing a 1-4-5 progression, it's not the blues.
Yeah.
That's where I tell them, you realize Robert Johnson was known for playing Broadway tunes live,
Oh,
right?
yeah. Robert Johnson and all those guys, those men were playing music of the times and for
Yeah.
the people. Whatever
Yeah.
the people would request, those guys probably could play. Look at a guy like Lonnie Johnson. I mean, that guy could
Oh,
play
yeah.
anything, you know,
Absolutely.
way back then.
I went on a really crazy a failed New Year's resolution, as most of them are. But I had made this resolution to listen to an album a day, like
Yeah.
an entire
Front to
album a
back.
day,
Yeah.
front to back.
Mm-hmm.
And I started, and I was going to do monthly genres. And so
Mm-hmm.
I decided in January I was going to pick the blues, which is a genre I am very familiar with, but I was going to pick the players and the quintessential records that everybody always, ever references, but for some reason I never listened to them.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
went back and listened to like the Mississippi Fred McDowell recordings that I
Oh,
missed.
yeah.
And then I listened to Lonnie Johnson for the first
Yeah.
time in January.
Mm-hmm.
But the one that blew my mind that I'm like, why is nobody talking about this guy more is Blind Lemon Jefferson. Like,
Oh
I
man, that's an
good
institution. Texas, and he's one of the
goodness.
earliest guys too. Man,
Yeah.
that's
And he was doing stuff that I was like, he was so ahead of the guys that came 10 years after him. Like, it's like, oh my gosh.
and
And
you will
I'm hearing
find
these
that.
songs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you'll find that a million times over in that music. That's the thing about it, you know.
And there's such a depth to it that people stop at Robert Johnson, or they
Yeah,
stop at, they'll stop at Muddy Waters, or they'll stop
yeah.
at John Lee Hooker, or
Mm-hmm.
even, you see some that don't go much past I'm not gonna start throwing names out because I just combined two names and I'm not gonna say them out loud because it's embarrassing. It's the wrong names, but they stop and they don't
Yeah.
explore further, and they don't find out about the guys like Blind Lemon Jefferson until they start reading liner notes, and nobody reads liner notes anymore, do they?
Yeah.
Those don't exist anymore.
Yeah.
But they're like, oh, this song that I've always loved by this artist was actually written by Blind Lemon Jefferson. You know what I mean?
That's very true. And another thing I'll say, I don't know if it's like this for other people or you or anything, but my teachers, people like Al Blake from the Hollywood Fats Band, Kim Wilson, Junior Watson, Linwood Slint, all of these guys from the West Coast who are blues historians, as well as people in the Bay Area like Rusty Zen, all these cats really, really know their stuff, But
Yeah.
excuse me, like now that I'm older, I kind of like I had to find this music for myself, sort of.
Yeah.
So I start to, because you kind of have this filter of the people that hipped you to stuff, and you kind of stay there in that thing, and you kind of, when you're older, you kind of have a whole different other way because you've lived more life and you want to find things for yourself. Like jazz music. I had this one person that hit me to a lot of jazz stuff, but now that I'm older, it's like, man, well, I like, like Count Basie, or I like this
Yeah.
certain thing, Lester Young or Gene Ammons, and you can still feel that swing and blues element in there, and that's the stuff that I like. So it's really now about like finding the music for myself, and that's not to belittle what I learned from my teachers, who I love dearly, but it's sort of like a different thing, and now I have to be that guy to kind of hit the younger generation to a lot of stuff, because a lot of the younger generation is lost because it's too
Yeah.
overwhelming with YouTube and all of this stuff. I mean, who would even know where to start?
Just
Every
glance through Spotify and try to find something to listen to.
yeah,
It's
and
like,
like,
oh my gosh.
where would you? I mean, like Chicago blues records and things like that. I mean, there's these young guys that don't even know, about this or that record that are incredible, and I'll like just reference it on my YouTube, and even if
Hmm.
it's a small thing, if one person gets hip to a record, it's worth it.
Yeah. And
Anyway, sorry.
it's worth, no, it's worth noting in this conversation, what we're talking about, what you're talking about, at least what I think, you're
Yeah,
not talking about picking that one person who's hip to the latest pop band and trying to convince them to listen to some old school blues. You're talking
yeah,
about people who are into blues and trying to hip them to the folks they should have listened
right,
to.
right.
We're not trying to convert people. We're talking to the people already
They're
disciples of blues
already
music.
there. Yeah,
It, like I went through in January, where suddenly
yeah.
I'm listening to records I should have listened to 20 years ago. You know?
I didn't listen to Belly much. It just wasn't in
Yeah.
my wheelhouse of people, because it's somebody new every day that you can listen to from 100
Yes.
years ago. So it's like you find these beautiful jewels, that you haven't really heard or heard much of, or you have this opinion when you're younger of this person or whatever.
Yeah, Lead
So
Belly is another one I listened to in January for the first time. I had heard some, but never
yeah.
like intentional listening is more what I mean.
Well,
That
the whole the whole pandemic, was all about that for me. Like the whole pandemic, the
yeah.
way to find healing in the time when we're sitting at home, not knowing when we're going to work or anything like that. The only healing I could find was going back to when I was a kid, listening to records all the time. And, with this app called Discogs, I was able to buy records. I would do, live streams or whatever. And,
Sure.
I would get a little money, and
Hmm.
I would buy these records, and I just, just didn't cost a lot. You could find different, prices. And it wasn't about the, quality of the record. As long as I get the information, I've always been like that. And I would get the European, I was living in Switzerland, and I would
Right.
get the European pressing of some of these records, and it was such a
Oh,
beautiful thing that got me through these sad, depressing times.
oh, very.
Music,
Absolutely.
music is
So
something else. Yeah,
so let's talk about that a little bit. So
yeah.
family from Pine Bluff, Arkansas,
Hmm.
grew up in Compton, California,
Yeah,
and then
Lakewood, Compton, yeah, a
yeah,
few different places.
and
Yeah.
end up in Switzerland. How's that happen?
I fell in
So
love. It's blues is a woman. I fell in love.
yeah,
That's basically it. I fell in love with a woman. I was playing in Europe. I was going to Europe semi often, so it wasn't. And I had worked with a pop artist in Europe, so Europe wasn't as big of a leap to me as it might have been to some people to move
sure.
there. And yeah, love. It's just a thing, it's a beautiful thing, and it's a different place and a whole, and I'm a different person, for moving there and experiencing a different way of life, and the things that a lot of times we struggle with is just not, present there. And it goes both
Yeah.
ways because it's life. It's not a fairy tale.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
you know?
exactly. It
You know?
look, life is a series of happy and sad. You're not going to get just all
Yeah.
the good. So
I mean,
if there weren't sad, we wouldn't have blues music. So
yeah. Or
actually, we
even
might not have music.
yeah, even comforting yourself. Even when people say blues, oh, it's so sad all the time. But comforting is the other thing. And when you think about even something like metal music or something like that, they're getting out this aggression, they're getting out this
Yeah.
thing, and it's intense and it's this release. Well, for some people, blues is the same thing. It's not all,
Hmm.
it's a celebration about American history. It's a celebration about culture. It's a celebration about all these things. So it ain't all sad.
No, not at all. So you were in Switzerland, and so you were in Switzerland when the pandemic hit. So
Oh
you
yeah.
started out there. So
Oh yeah.
that had to be an experience.
Hmm.
But you're back in Nashville now.
Uh huh.
Living back in Nashville.
Hmm.
You got a new record coming out, Heartache
Yeah.
by the Pound, coming out in July
July
29th.
29th, I believe. Yeah.
So did you record all that in Nashville? You got all that recorded in
I
Nashville?
actually recorded at Fame Studios in Muscle Shoals.
Oh,
Cause see, another thing during the pandemic, I started writing songs with my dear buddy Richard Cousins, who plays bass with Robert Cray.
oh yeah.
He lives in Switzerland. So how
Really?
crazy is that? One of my heroes lived in Switzerland, so we were able to get together every week and hang out and just be
That's
cool. And
so
he
cool.
became like a mentor, really, in a whole different way. Because obviously I had guitar mentors, but
Right.
him just being a little bit older, a mentor as far as song construction and really working out these lyrics and things like that as best I can. He was absolutely a mentor. So I would go to his house every week, kind of, and it was sort of like a task for me to have this song as finished as I could and then go to him.
I
And he
gotcha.
was so cool. He wouldn't try and rewrite my song. He would just try and make it better. And I never
Yeah.
had that with a songwriter, or co-write. They always want to
Right.
make the song like, rewrite it or something like this. And he was just trying to amplify my, what I was trying to say from my heart anyway. So that's like, how could it be any better?
That's the best kind of co-writer.
So yeah,
That's the
I
best
owe
kind.
I owe Richard a lot. So this started, and at first I was going to do a straight ahead blues record, which I love and I'll still do. This is a real straight ahead, cool, everything I'd want to hear on a classic style blues record, original songs and stuff. But it morphed into, I don't know, I'm a weird person. It morphed into gospel. It morphed into soul blues. And then I started to think about a guy like Albert King. It's like Albert King, when you think of Born Under a Bad Sign,
Right.
man, it is a soul blues record.
That's absolutely right.
And would you think Albert King is anything other than a blues musician? No.
That's what he is.
So I'm like,
It's
well,
exactly.
what's my problem? Why do I have to feel confined on what's this or what's that? I'm Kirk Fletcher. I play the blues, but I like to tell you about stories that maybe could help you.
There you go.
So then I tried to do the best record I could instead of even thinking about, just the songs were the most important thing. And I said, well, if we're in a pandemic, I want to make this record about my dream. What would be my ultimate dream for these songs? And my ultimate dream would be to play at Fame Studios. That's one of the only studios that's still relatively like it was in the past.
Right.
Talk about vibe.
Yeah, no kidding.
So
I've been to Muscle Shoals a bunch, but I've never been to Fame Studios.
Oh man, you have to go in there and talk to Spencer Coates, man. That guy rules. He's one of the engineers there.
I watched the documentary. That was on Netflix. What a great documentary!
Really cool, man.
It's such a cool space. That and Sun Records. Of course, Sun Records is different than Fame. Fame just kept doing it.
Yeah.
Sun Records was walled up for years until somebody tore the walls down. Luckily, I think the live room or the control room or maybe both were literally just walled up as they were. And so when they tore the walls down, it was basically, it's been untouched by these decades. So we don't have to worry about it.
It's funny too. Speaking of that, I have, a dear buddy, Joe Bonamassa, and he done this record at Abbey Road. In his world, that's the ultimate thing, because we talked about it. And I was excited for it. I was like, damn, Abbey Road, that's incredible.
That's the place.
And for him, that's amazing. And it kind of just I kept it in the back of my mind, like, man, I want to do something like that too. And he's always inspiring in so many ways. And I was talking about it with my buddy Josh Smith, and I was like, man, what would be the ultimate studio for you to record in, for you, out of all of them, And I was like, man, Fame Studios, because a lot of my favorite records, like Morning in the Morning by Otis Rush, and the Staple Singers, and Aretha Franklin. I'm like, man, that's it. The music that I hold closest to my heart, Wilson Pickett, So I was like, man, this is my ultimate wish. So once you have something in your head, you just try and achieve it. So then you start selling guitars. You start saving up your money and all that. During the pandemic, if you set your mind to something and you commit to it and you follow it through and you save little by little, you can do it. And I saved up enough money to do it. Plus, my friend Mick Hayes, a really good friend of mine, incredible artist from Buffalo, New York area, he had recorded there too. So he was able to kind of put me in contact with people and kind of tell me how it was. And the way he was talking about it was like a religious experience, just being there and everything,
cool.
So it got me really excited about it.
It's the equivalent of, a classical or a jazz musician playing Carnegie Hall, or,
right.
A rock musician playing Royal Albert Hall in Europe. It's like, you got to do it. If that's what you want to do, set your mind to it and do it.
Yep.
And I think that's so hard for some people, and it was hard for me. It's like one of those things where it's like you have this big idea and you're like, oh, but that's so impossible to do.
Oh,
and then it's like,
totally.
But if you're like, well, I'll take one step towards it.
Yeah.
One step towards it. One step towards it. Eventually.
That's my nature. That's my nature, to look at something, so far away, to look at it like, oh man, I can't achieve that, or, I don't have enough money to do that. And when you start to think about it realistically, man, it's a studio. It's not like it's $1 million to record at Fame or anything like that. I mean, it's
right.
It's
It's a
approachable.
studio just like any other. It's
Yeah.
approachable.
But
And,
in my mind, I'm just that kind of person where I kind of, you know, I don't have low self-esteem, but I'm insecure about certain things, and it's just my nature to always kind of be in the background, kind of, even though I'm a solo artist and I got many records out and all that, I'm still kind of like, yeah, because I love to play rhythm and just kind of make things sound cool, you know.
yeah,
But
it,
I
it
was like,
building those textures and the groove
yeah,
and the feel.
yeah.
Yeah, I
And
love
now,
that.
now that I spent, all of this money and everything, now I'm doing like a GoFundMe for the promotion part. So the promotion can be on the same level as the music.
Yes.
And that is very expensive. A lot of people spend all of these thousands of dollars on a record, and then it falls by the wayside because they don't promote it right, or they don't
Yeah.
have the funds to promote it right, or they don't think it's important, to do that. And that's just as important as the music,
If
to
not more
promote it.
important.
Yeah.
Because it's
I
one
mean,
thing to get it recorded and make the music, but if you have no way to tell people about it, especially like you said, in the maelstrom of constant new music coming out that we have,
oh,
if
man.
nobody has a way to find out about it,
Yeah.
you're it's dead in the water. It's not going to
And,
do anything.
and many people say, "Oh, well, the internet, man, you could just, promote it on the internet." Do you know how many people promote music on the internet? And you need to get above all of that. And if you want to get
Yeah.
above all that, you got to pay for it.
Yeah.
That's just,
It's got to be millions a month putting out new music and promoting it on the internet. It's got to be, right? I'm
oh
making up
yeah,
numbers here, but it's got to be.
that's probably light. It's probably
Yeah,
even
exactly. I may be
more.
undercutting it.
I
It may be
know.
millions a day.
I mean,
But
I see so many. I'm just so overwhelmed by all that. And people say, "Oh, print media is not important anymore." Oh, well, this is not important. I'm like, well, all of these big stars and a lot of these, people that are well known still do it. So there
they
must
still
be
do it.
something to it. There's
Yeah.
no there's no money in the music industry and things like that. Man, it is. You just,
It's just not like it used to be.
yeah.
That's what they mean. Like it's not the days of the '90s and early 2000s
Oh
where you
yeah.
signed an artist and then you dropped $85 million
Oh
making their
yeah.
record, promoting it,
Yeah.
outfitting them, paying the band, and then putting them on the road to
Yeah.
start their career. This is an unknown artist.
Oh
Now
no,
record labels are like, you need to be a little established.
a
You need
lot
to have a
established,
product.
baby.
Yeah. You need to have a product already. You
Yeah.
need to and
They
and we might put thousands of dollars into you, tens,
Yeah.
maybe hundreds, but
Yeah.
the days of 85 million to kickstart a career, I think, are
Yeah.
done.
I mean, they don't want to. Labels don't want to spend any extra time developing an artist. Really, I
No.
mean, not in anything other than maybe super pop or something.
Yeah.
But nobody wants to do anything. They want to do as least amount of work as they possibly can. And then they own the product forever, and then you might
Yes.
not never see any money. So what does Kirk do on this one? Because I've already been that person that never seen any money on records that I've done with
Right.
labels. Kirk does a GoFundMe. So
Yep.
he can try and put himself in a place to where he can earn money on it. He can own it. And maybe he can help other people too and be a role model to other people. Because do you realize how much incredible music that nobody never heard that's out there? I mean,
Yes.
when you just think about that for a minute. Like the people that a record label won't sign because they don't have enough followers. They won't sign them because of this or that. I'm like, man, it's unbelievable
Yeah.
to even think
I think
about.
that's where mediums like TikTok are starting to take over some of that. And it's like
Yeah.
exposing people
Yes.
to some of these things. Because I'll watch. My wife showed me this.
Mm-hmm.
He's a country rap artist, and I'm trying to think of his name right now.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, he did a song. She's gonna be so mad at me. I'm forgetting his name because I see his stuff all the time. But he did one of those like open verse things, right? So he
Yeah.
took his song and then left an open verse for people to craft their own verse to go on there.
Yeah.
And it's like singer after songwriter of incredible vocal writing talent. Just feel, I'm like, there's thousands of people out there
I mean,
who are incredible that we can't hear because, a label won't touch them because they're too undeveloped, or they,
yeah.
they haven't done this thing.
I
Or
mean, I have friends in my cell phone that put out perfect music. Perfect.
yes,
I mean, like, man, you think about a band like the Brothers Landreth, Joey Landreth. Man, this cat is
yes,
one of the most amazing singers ever, and this guitar playing is like, I mean, but it never gets in the way of his, songs or any. I mean, it's like
it's
one of the
song
most,
first writing.
yeah, it's one of the most developed bands, live shows, everything that you'll see, and you go, man, they should be, on the CMT Awards, they should
Right?
be on the Grammys, because, and they will be. I'm just saying,
They will. No, they
it's,
will.
but so
I've
many,
had
like,
I've had Joey on this show,
oh,
and
cool,
it's
man.
one of those things where it's like, um, they also just put out a new record, not to
Yeah,
promote somebody else's record
killer.
on your episode, but
Yeah.
it just dropped day before yesterday.
Yeah.
Um,
Friday. Yeah.
yeah, it's a great record.
It's
It's
incredible.
incredible,
Yeah.
and I think part of their thing is, and this is awesome, this is fine, I'm not saying this is a bad thing. I think part of the thing is people don't know what they are. It's like, are you country? Are you
Yeah, but you don't need to know
rock?
it.
No, you don't, because they are incredible. So if you haven't listened to the
Man.
Bros Landreth, go listen to that new record.
Yeah. I totally know what you mean, though. I know what you're saying, but man, but to see, that's the difference. We live in a different time,
Yep.
because in the old days, before my time, before our time,
Yes.
you might go to the Fillmore in San Francisco or in New York and see, like, I don't know, you might see, like, the Grateful Dead, Buddy Guy, and, like, Janis Joplin all on the same bill. And people
How
just
cool
didn't
was that?
care. It's like, and that's the way I am. I don't care. I just want it to be good,
I wish if I could go back in time.
Yeah.
I want to see one of those like handful of shows where Jimi Hendrix opened for the Monkees.
That would have
before they pulled him.
That would have been awesome. And doing this whole thing,
Yes.
for the Monkees crowd. Could you imagine? Oh my God.
I wish I could have seen it. That would have been but that's what we're talking about. It's like totally different music. Like they just, all right, let's do it. Let's do this thing.
But with that, they were trying to like get him in front of the most people.
Oh
possible.
Absolutely. Because the Monkees were the biggest thing possible at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, what weird marketing.
I thought you were gonna say like at the Fillmore, like Hendrix would like.
No, I'd love to have seen it, but I feel like that would be as monumental. Like having seen Hendrix at Woodstock or something like that would be. I want to see the faces of Monkees fans
and
experiencing Jimi Hendrix.
I know.
Yes.
That would have been awesome, man. They're doing like Foxy Lady with the whole booze and everything at a Monkey show. Oh man. I didn't even think about that, but I'm glad you brought that up. That's hilarious. Because I'm a big Hendrix, like, guy. I don't play his music. I kind of, like think about it as like the Mona Lisa of music, kind of in a way.
Yeah.
Joni Mitchell, Jimi Hendrix, that's sort of like space music that I love, But
I have a few of those. Growing up as a blues guitar player.
Yeah.
Everyone, I've gone through a bunch of phases. It's funny how it shifts as you get older.
Yeah.
But I started just like so many of my age. I'd experienced Stevie Ray Vaughan, and it was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. It appealed to that rock and roll side a little bit.
Yeah.
And then, I moved from that. Then I discovered Albert King.
Yeah.
And I still cover a ton of Albert King just because he's not my biggest influence anymore, but I still think he wrote and recorded the most perfect blues albums.
Yeah.
Because they were perfect.
His singing too. Oh my God. Jeez.
Yeah.
The older I get, the more I'm like, oh my goodness, the whole package,
Yeah, he had everything.
But
then BB. And then I moved to BB, and it was
yeah, that's my guy. I was going to add to what you were saying too about the Stevie Ray Vaughan thing, because for our era, Stevie Ray Vaughan was such a big impact, and there's something very interesting about Stevie Ray Vaughan that's different than a lot of guitar players, blues guitar players today. Is you always felt that he was paying respect to the older guys. And like you just said it right there. And that's my whole point. It's like, I went to Albert King, and you knew about Otis Rush. He would not only talk about these guys, he would cover their songs and tell people, and things like that. So Stevie really made it exciting to be a blues guitar player. That's something that, what were you going to say?
I was going to say that album he recorded with Albert King is phenomenal.
Yeah.
Or if you go back and look at his 2 shows at Montreux Blues Festival. Not the first one. The first one's incredible, but the second one.
I like the first one.
It's great. I love hearing the boos.
Yeah,
it's like real
I know
awkward.
That's terrible. That part of it is terrible.
Yeah.
But he played Give Me Back
the
My
second
Weed.
time, he brings little Johnny Taylor out to play with him. He's bringing these guys
along. Mean Johnny Copeland?
Johnny Copeland, yes, thank you. Not little Johnny Taylor. Johnny Copeland.
That would have been cool, though.
That would have been very cool,
wow.
too. Because, he does some little Johnny Taylor stuff. He brought Johnny Copeland out to play with him. And so, there's also, and it's for another podcast, not this one. There's a stigma around Stevie Ray Vaughan also. There's a thing. I love his music, but there's that white guy with a Strat playing blues, stigma. That, you know what I mean? That
I don't know anything you're talking about right now.
No. Nothing. Yeah,
I never heard that.
I'm Lebanese, so I don't know what they're talking about either. But yeah, there's that thing, and it's like I remember the first time I sort of realized it, and that's when that was my move away from Strats too, and I think I've been away from Strats since then. But it's an interesting thing, but it was that thing that led me down other avenues, and that's how I discovered some of these other influences on me.
Yeah.
Everything like you were talking about Southern Soul, and then there's like that West Coast thing.
Yeah.
I got really into the West Coast thing for a little while too. That whole jump blues. That swing blues thing, and it's just so cool, and it's so fun to play.
Yeah.
Actually, I have a lot more fun playing rhythm in that style than I do in some of the others. The rhythm is wild.
It's funny talking about Stevie Ray Vaughan. It's like Stevie was an original. Stevie was cool.
Yep.
Stevie was incredible, and he was his own thing. But it's like one of these things where you start to kind of like question the fans, though.
That's what I question. The thing. I don't question Stevie at all.
Everybody trying to be like him, and I'm not knocking anybody or anything like that, but it's just like, would Stevie have really wanted that, or would he want his music to be an inspiration to dig deeper? And that's what I done. I use Stevie as a person to go, man, in my weird youthful mind, I was like, man, I want to make this guy proud because he influenced me. And I think the most hippest way to do that is to dig deep into blues like he did and played all these records and, got all of the older guys, because he was just so weird. I mean, his fashion sense was weird. He played super loud, and he floored it all the time. And it's 100%. The baddest dude,
I've still yet to hear anyone ever, any genre, who can play that intense, that foot to the floor, and stay behind the beat.
Yeah.
And still sit in a pocket.
Yeah.
There's a lot of guys who try to do that, 4 on the floor, let's push it, let's move. And they end up shifting their feel, and they're ahead of the beat, and it feels chaotic. Stevie never felt chaotic. It was always in a pocket.
Yeah, it's even crazy too. Like this whole thing, I've been talking about this my whole life pretty much, but the whole comparison to Hendrix and Stevie, and and it's like, man, I hear that this guy loved Hendrix, Stevie loved Hendrix, but I definitely don't hear it just like Stevie had so much of his brother and so much of this
Yes.
whole like blues thing, and Hendrix was like on the moon, kind of. You know, it's like
Yes.
it's like okay, this is super terrible for me to say, but I'm gonna say it anyway.
Uh-huh.
But Hendrix was like psychedelic,
Yeah.
and Stevie was more like '80s and cocaine sort of, you know, that
Yeah.
like that kind of, and no, in psychedelic and that is two totally different things is what I'm
Different
getting at.
worlds.
I don't think anybody should be doing drugs and wreck their life and all that. I'm not saying
Right.
that. I'm not promoting anything like that. I'm
Sure.
just saying that it's two different things. It's apples and oranges to me. You know, if you're driving down the street, you know, Hendrix is going to be in a Lincoln driving, cruising down the street, and he'll get there when he gets there. Stevie
Right.
is going to be in a Trans Am or some kind of, you know, spaceship getting there as fast as possible, you know, in the
Right.
coolest, hippest way. And it's cool to be in a spaceship, right? You know,
Oh, absolutely.
and that's the thing that I in the phrasing and the songs and the whole Hendrix thing, and it's a different era. So that was always the thing that was really cool. I love both of them, but
Yeah. So, and
yeah.
actually, that's how I made this shift to Stevie is the conversation about Jimmy, because while their styles are very different, I think a lot of that comes from, Stevie would cover Hendrix
Voodoo
tunes, and he
Child
covered Voodoo Child, he
sounds
covered Little
super
Wing,
different.
and oh yeah, look at Little Wing, he made it a complete instrumental. You know
I
what I mean?
know it is
I,
so different.
as a complete and utter embarrassment to myself, um, because I remember I started playing guitar at 18, so I didn't
Yeah,
discover Stevie till I was 19 or so,
yeah, yeah.
and then that means I did not know that Little Wing had lyrics until I was 20 or 21,
That's
because
awesome.
I only knew Stevie's version, and it made me go back and find Hendrix. And actually,
Yeah.
Little Wing was my gateway drug to Jimi
Oh
Hendrix.
yeah, the
And
bells and everything on there,
oh,
boom, and all that. Oh man,
it's
that's
so good.
you know, that's like
I
yeah, like
I
Voodoo
was gonna say,
Child. Oh, I'm sorry. What were you
I
gonna
was I was I was
say?
just gonna say, and then from there, like that shifted everything,
Yeah.
like discovering Hendrix, and so I think they both play strats, and he covered some of his songs. So that's where some of the people get the like comparison. It's like there's not a comparison there.
You know, even like Robin Trower, yes, I hear the Hendrix influence, but I go, man, this cat was writing songs. Like Robin Trower was writing songs, and he had a whole like hard rock blues thing. And I actually see because I came along in a different era. I didn't come along in like the '70s where it would have been like,
Right.
oh, this Hendrix copy or whatever like that. I didn't. I'm like totally a whole different generation. I could just hear this and then I can hear that and go, okay, well, I'll come to my own conclusion about it instead of
Yeah.
like thinking something.
Yeah. You don't have to have a hot take about it because it was so in the
Yeah, it's
past.
like
It's like
yeah, it doesn't matter to me.
you wonder if in that vein, I wonder if people will look back in 10, 20, 30 years and have the same sort of comparison about like Led Zeppelin versus like Greta Van Fleet. You know how now it's the hot take is to hate them because they sound too much like Led Zeppelin and sound like a ripoff. I wonder if we'll have that same kind of reflection in 20 or 30 years once we're a
I
little
just
removed from it.
I just like them because they're breath of fresh air, kind of with a lot of
Yeah.
things, and I expect for things to be like they are, and I expect a band like Greta Van Fleet to be popular. I mean,
That makes
it's like
sense.
my expectations are not that high, and I think it's cool. I mean, it's cool. I mean, this guy gets up on stage and they rock. And
Yeah.
it's got a killer tone, and everything, and the lead singer sounds cool, and it's a cool thing for the times. I mean, but you have to realize, like, when you think about the times that we live in, I don't expect, I mean, like, when you think about Led Zeppelin, we're talking about a certain time and a certain level of musicianship that's you're doing rock music, but these guys are serious musicians. Jimmy Page
Oh
was
yeah.
one of the greatest rhythm guitar players ever,
Yeah.
and John Paul Jones, like think about all of the stuff that he done, and John Bonham. I mean, that's like life changing. revolutionary music, and then Robert Plant and those records, So, I mean, like, can you really even compare those two? I mean,
Right.
like, I wish Greta Van Fleet the best, and I hope they keep on going and
Yeah.
everything like that and evolve into, thing. And I already think they are, So
Yeah.
that's where I'm at with that. It's like,
Yeah. I think John Paul Jones is sort of the underappreciated
oh,
member of
yeah,
Led Zeppelin.
yeah.
For like everyone's like, oh yeah, he played bass. Yeah, he
Well,
played everything. He played everything. If it is not a guitar or drums on that
mhm.
record, it was John Paul Jones. You know?
Mandolin,
Yeah. Keys.
keys.
Yeah. He did everything.
I mean,
What
and
a
they
what a
got
brilliant
so
man.
like talk about painting a whole like picture with sound. Like, man, I mean, they were like all of these, Indian influences, acoustic and blues, and like all of these textures, and like you remember that it might get loud,
Yeah.
like, hey, and no offense to the White Stripes or U2 or anything like that, because I grew up listening to U2 and stuff like that, and I mean, I think Edge is incredible, and I think
Yeah.
Jack White is incredible. I'm not dissing on anything, but I will say this:
But
when Jimmy Page came in with like Ramble On the rhythm by himself, both of those guys and myself watching it were like, okay, this is on a different level of like just it's like, oh my, and that's what I'm saying. Like, your
yeah.
riff is like that, you coming that hard,
And the
And
thing I love about Jimmy Page's playing is that he wasn't he was brilliant, he was incredible, and he did it by being not like metronomically perfect and precise. There
yeah,
was
that's what I like
I
about
hesitate to use the word sloppiness
it.
because I don't want to use that word, but there was this almost intentional sloppiness to it. There was a
Yeah,
push and a pull and this like rubato to the style he played, and it was like it made it alive. It makes his playing
exactly.
breathe.
And that's the thing that I kind of like get annoyed with by modern recording, because I'm like, man, let's try and get this first take when we have all of these creative juices flowing and things,
Mhm.
instead of like polishing and getting a perfect take, it's like, come on, like, let's get down with it. But,
Yes.
people are kind of just different now. It's a lot of sameness in recording and music and the way you get drum sounds and all that these days. And there's always exceptions too,
Always,
you know.
always, especially when you have as many people recording music today as there are. There's more people making records today than at any point in history. So,
I will say though that like Brandy Carlisle is incredible. Jason
yes.
Isbell is incredible. Dave Cobb, the producer, I'm a big fan of them because that's kind of what we're talking about and what we all love about those old records. They're kind of, addressing
Yeah.
those things that I have a problem with modern recording.
Oh yeah, and
Dave Cobb
it's
is
sort of like
amazing.
it's sad to see, and I'm a massive Jason Isbell fan.
Yeah.
I got to see him
Oh,
last
cool.
year at the Ryman,
Oh,
and like
nice.
if you have not experienced Jason Isbell, try
Oh,
to
I
catch him
will.
at the Ryman.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where you do it.
Yeah. The Mother
Um,
Church.
yeah, exactly. He did an 8 night run at the
Oh, yeah.
Ryman, and I caught him. My wife and I went on the second night, and he also had I can't believe I'm forgetting it because I could tell you any other time. He had an opening act, and I'm going
Allison
to do that thing
Russell.
where you no, it
Oh, okay.
was because he did a different opener every night,
Oh, okay. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
let's see. I'm going to do that thing where you Google something on a podcast. It's
Yeah.
totally
Oh, man. Hey,
uh yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, like, I know that Allison Russell, who I'm a big fan of now, that record that you put out is just
Yes.
incredible,
Um
you know.
I'm going to find it. I'm going to find it. Yeah, she was one of the openers for that as well.
Yeah.
She opened on the 22nd.
Oh, okay.
Let me see if I can find the full list of people that opened for him. This is so not good podcasting, y'all. I'm so sorry, but I have to know this now because
Oh, I
it's
know.
gonna
I'm the
bother me
same
because
way.
Brittany Spencer.
Oh,
I don't know
okay.
if you've heard Brittany Spencer.
I don't know if I've heard her stuff yet. Just
She's
because it's not
incredible.
enough hours in the day.
There's not. Incredible.
Wow, I'm gonna check her out
Absolutely
for sure.
incredible. They did a cover of Rolling Stones. I'm real bad at titles, by the way.
Me
Real bad at
too.
this.
And song lyrics too. I'm terrible.
Yes. There's the Gimme Shelter.
Oh, okay.
That Mary Clayton originally sang
Yeah.
the background vocals
Yeah.
on, and Brittany just eviscerated it. It's
I think
so
I
good.
saw a clip of that or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She just
Okay.
she's got a hell of a voice. So
Wow.
I highly recommend checking out Brittany Spencer. But I got completely sidetracked. So recording,
it's all good.
recordings. It's sad that this. I'm going to be one of those doomsayers that talks about what's happening in Nashville.
Mhm.
They're ripping down Music Row, and it's like some of these places, these 1 and 2 room studios that they're not thinking much of, but that like they produced thousands of hit records in these buildings that they're tearing down to put in condos on Music Row. And
well, I'll tell you what. Think about LA though. That's like times 20. I mean, it's like,
yeah, that's true.
Oh man, like that. Now Nashville, maybe I don't know Nashville well enough to have an opinion, but
yeah.
LA is like that's times 20 there. It's like, man, they were talking about tearing down Capitol Records.
Oh my
like,
gosh.
Are you kidding me?
What?
I was like, what? And all of those studios, good thing Sunset Sound and a few others are still there. But man,
Sunset Sound's the only studio in LA I've been to. We did some work there back in like 2004.
That place is
what
amazing.
A cool facility. What a cool facility. It was like we were there and we were working in one studio. North Mississippi All-Stars were in another.
Awesome.
And then we walk out to the common area and there's the drummer from the Mars Volta and the project he's working with. I'm like, what a weird, cool place.
I was there, doing some work with my buddy Joe, and Brandy Carlisle walks out because they were and I knew the guitar player, and I'm like, wow. And I'm from LA, and it's still I still get starstruck by stuff.
It's so crazy. LA was a crazy place. We spent 2 weeks there doing some gigs. I've never done like big time touring. I've done weekend run stuff.
Yeah.
And we did a 2-week thing where we did 3 or 4 shows in the LA area.
Cool.
For my sister's band, she was working with a producer out there, and I was playing bass for her. And
cool.
What a wild experience the music scene in LA and the little tiny taste of it I got. So
LA is crazy, man.
Yeah, that's a whole other experience.
So
before we're coming closer to the end of the main episode, so I want to get into a little bit of gear talk.
Yeah, sure.
And then we will carry on into Patreon with more gear talk and some patron questions for you.
Yeah.
I asked in our Discord, in our patron channel, if they had any questions for you. We've got a couple, and they may spur some pretty interesting conversation.
Okay.
So when I saw you at Juke Joint, you were playing a Les Paul.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've got like most guitar players, you've got a few guitars.
Yeah. Had to be. Named after my beautiful aunt.
Oh, nice.
Had to be Gooseberry. Yeah.
So
no lie.
I've seen you play a few different things because I've kept up with your Instagram videos you'll do, or your YouTube videos that you'll do. So do you tend to rotate your guitars a bunch? You have one that's your main one?
Well, I always like switch guitars and stuff. I'll get bored or something, but I switch guitars and stuff like that. But when it's the right one, I'll kind of tend to gravitate towards that, that one quite a bit. When it works for me, when it's it just it's a thing, and this guitar just sounds really great, and everything, and I play that one a lot. But I tend to kind of switch guitars up a little bit because I think each guitar kind of inspires a new thing, and I'm too lazy to practice.
I felt that.
Yeah.
I've been going through the John Scofield True Fire lesson.
Oh, wow.
Talking Blues or something like that, where he's going through his influences and their styles, and
Yeah.
I'm trying to pick up some things that I may have skipped in the past. You know how it is, like when
Yeah.
you're learning and you're like, I don't want to deal with that right now, and then you like move on. You're like, I never learned that. Like
Yeah.
I should have that language, but I don't have it.
Yeah.
And so I need to
I'm like
to
that
learn. So that's
about
what
a
I'm
lot of
doing.
stuff.
Yeah. So I've been going through this one lesson for like 5 weeks. I'm like not as far into it as I wish I were. Yeah, every guitar is a little different. That's, I think, I don't remember who I heard talking about it on one of the YouTube shows that people do, but
Mm-hmm.
Talking about the fact you can't pick up one guitar and try to make it sound like another guitar. Why are you bothering? Like, figure out what voice that guitar has and play to its strengths, and it brings something different out in you. And so that's why we play so many different guitars. It's not a hoarder justification, as a lot of people believe.
Yeah.
It really is. Every guitar makes you play differently.
I really think that learning to play guitar in the first little bit, maybe you should kind of stick to one guitar, when you're first starting out, because you do need to kind of have that first bond, with the instrument and learn it and figure out everything about it and everything. I started out on the Strat, and that I didn't have any money to buy a Gibson or anything, else really. I had a Strat I think my parents bought for me, or my brother. It was my brother hand me down or whatever. And I really, I love George Benson. Definitely couldn't play like him, but just trying to, in my little child mind, trying to figure out how to get that sound. Or like funk music, trying to get that sound out of a Strat, or all of these different things. And it's just what I started. So, just having that instrument and trying to make it sound like all these different things was actually cool for me, And then when you get older and you start trying different things, I went through a Telecaster phase, and the only thing about the Telecaster for me is you can't make the bridge pickup sound like anything else. It sounds like a Telecaster,
yeah.
And that can be good or it can be like annoying. With the Strat on the bridge, you kind of make that sound like more different things. Most people say you can't, but I can.
Yeah.
You can roll a tone back, put a little boost on it and almost make it sound like a P90,
Yep.
Then the middle pickup, you got your Anson Funderburg and like Jimmy Vaughn and stuff like that. The neck pickup, I do not go for the Stevie Ray Vaughan sound. Like, I think throaty like Hendrix or Doyle Bramhall, bassy, fat neck pickup. That's what I like, more so than the Stevie Ray Vaughan, kind of sound, which is amazing for him.
I tell people all the time that I spent maybe the first 15 years of my guitar playing life playing almost exclusively the neck pickup.
Yeah.
On every guitar I played.
Yeah.
I didn't play the bridge pickup because I didn't want that fire. I wanted mellow, I wanted warm, I wanted round.
Yeah.
And that's even in leads. Like I would just tailor my overdrive pedals to give it a little more bite, a little more push to get above the mix.
Yeah.
But that was my sound. And I was like,
man,
I didn't want to sound above the mix when I'm taking a solo. I wanted to sound like I'm part of the song still,
I probably could. I could probably have an Esquire or a Les Paul Jr. because I'm like, I live on the bridge. I mean, I am so bad. I go straight to the bridge pickup anytime I have to solo or stand out or anything, and then maybe I'll roll a tone back or something like that. But the bridge pickup, I just love it. I don't know.
I've discovered it in the last last decade or so, and I use it a lot more. But I've learned better to use it as a color and a flavor and live around it. I got really into Steve Morse for a little while there.
Man, the Dixie Dregs. Ooh.
Yes, and his work with Deep Purple.
And,
but he was the one who I first watched, and he will, and I do this occasionally now, but he was the first one I saw where he would be taking a solo and he'd be switching pickups middle of solo
Oh yeah,
to change the voice that
totally.
he playing with.
Yeah,
So like I added it to my guitar playing. It was fun. The first time I've done it in a couple of years because I haven't played a bunch of shows in the last 2 years.
yeah,
But at Juke Joint Festival, I was playing a solo and I was doing typical blues call and response.
yeah,
And I would switch pickups for call and
yeah,
switch pickups for response. So
yeah.
it's like
Well,
it's
see, that's the one thing about a Strat. I mean, I constantly, I know that instrument so well. The Strat is just, it's so easy to do that, and I'm so used to. And then the volume is right there, and it's just, perfect for that. But the only thing about now the Fender guitars and things like that, now I'm used to a warmer, thicker lead tone, and more sustained and a thicker tone on the high strings. In the Fender, a lot of times we'll get stringy kind of sound and kind of bright on the high E and B and G strings when you play up, and stuff like that. And yes, you could use a pedal, but I don't want to use a pedal.
right.
It's just
You just want to be able to play it.
Yeah, you just want to use a pedal maybe for a little boost to feel a little more comfortable under your fingers or something like that, but not to like really, it's just needing help all the time.
Yeah.
And then to me, the 70s and the guitar players that played in the 70s, that's like where it's
sound.
at. You got your 60s BB King and Albert King and Freddie King, all the guys that play like humbuckers and P90s and that sound. And then you got the 70s funky Wah Wah Watson, David T.
Johnny
Walker,
Guitar Watson,
Larry Carlton, Ray Parker Jr., all of those guys on humbuckers, but clean. Woo! And it's a little different than what everybody else does these days, like with their Telecasters with pedals. Man. Yeah. So that's where I am. I always try and do something slightly different than everybody else.
I find that on a Fender, I tend to overplay because the sustain isn't there and maybe the thickness of the tone isn't there. Mm-hmm. So I feel like I need to fill sonic space more. And so I overplay.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying I don't overplay all the time because there are probably some people who have heard me play. Like, Philip, I've heard you. I know how this goes, but
I definitely I'm sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead.
I was just going to say that I definitely take my time on the Gibson. Definitely.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Johnny Guitar Watson. Oh my gosh. You made me think of him with Wah Wah Watson. Johnny Guitar Watson.
Forget about it.
People don't even know. Like,
underrated.
People really need to. Oh, yeah. I get why. I know later in his career, he really, really pushed the disco thing.
Which is amazing.
It is. It's amazing. It is. But to blues people, they cut it off. You know what I mean?
We can't worry about them.
Yeah, no, we can't.
We can't worry about them.
I discovered him because of this YouTube video of him playing in Germany.
Yeah.
And the whole band is in these silver sequin jumpsuits. Yeah. And he's playing Gangster Love. Woo! And he's using a drumstick to mimic police sirens on his guitar. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Calling all cars. Calling all cars. Oh man.
He's so good. I every time I find a Johnny Guitar Watson record, I have to buy. Well, if I don't already have it, but I'm like,
I mean, that is so good. And then even like later, because I knew Rudy Copeland a little bit, from the LA area, and a lot of his band members lived in the LA area.
Gotcha.
And even on that last tour, I had played a gig like the day or two before. Rudy Copeland went to go play with Johnny Guitar Watson on the last round, and then even that band, he was like playing an SG through a twin reverb turned up really loud, or like a 345, whatever, But the humbuckers with that amp, it's just so nasty and so bluesy. I just love it. The humbucker thing clean is like that's a thing,
It's it's an underrated sound. I've always believed that a humbucker Gibson style guitar into a Fender amp, that's always been my thing.
Ooh,
that's
it.
That's the way it's supposed to sound right there.
Yeah.
So, well, we're gonna wrap up right here and take that into the Patreon episode.
Yeah.
Listeners, thank you so much for hanging out with us. Hope you've enjoyed this episode. Remember, if you're on YouTube, like and subscribe. If you are listening on your whatever favorite podcast listening device, please rate, review, share with your friends. Help keep this thing going. I appreciate all of the support. Again, I'm sure you noticed at the top of this episode, there are a couple of pre-roll ads. There's going to be a few more of those coming. So if you'd like to get these episodes without the ads, you can do so for $3 a month over on Patreon. And
Woo-hoo.
for $5 a month, you get extra content like this extra episode we're about to record with Kirk, where we take some patron questions and we do a little more talking about gear, because we haven't even talked about, we're just touching amps. And we started to talk about amps earlier. And
Totally.
we are both super reverb devotees. So
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, Kirk, thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah. So y'all remember, got a, give me the title one more time before I mess it up.
Heartache by the Pound coming out July 29th.
I wanted to move Heartache and Pound in that one, and that didn't
Pound
work.
by the Heartache.
That's a different album. That's a totally different album. So yeah, y'all keep it on your radar. Heartache by the Pound coming out July 29th. Kirk's got a GoFundMe. It's going to be in the links down below. Yeah. So y'all check that out. And until next time, be good to yourselves, be kind to each other, and make some noise.
Oh yeah.